You might remember we had an end of the world kind of chat in Matthew's Gospel as well, and that was equally difficult to understand. The reason this passage is a little bit tricky is because Jesus is talking about two things. The first one is the destruction of Jerusalem, and the second one is the end of the whole world and the kind of the final wrapping up of history. And if you have a little look in your Bible, what you'll see is verse 24 is the bit where the end of the whole world starts. And up until that stage, everything that Jesus is saying could certainly be taken as applying to the destruction of Jerusalem. So Jesus was wandering around in about 33 AD. He was crucified, resurrected, he ascended to heaven, and of course the early church exploded and went all over the Mediterranean and experienced a great deal of persecution. And also, one of the things that happened in 66 AD is that the Jewish people rebelled against the Romans who were in charge, and the Romans came down on them hard, and eventually what they did is they destroyed Jerusalem, and they destroyed the temple in Jerusalem, and it's remained destroyed up until this day. So in verse 14, where it talks about the abomination that causes desolation, and then Mark has a little side point, let the reader understand, he's saying, get that what I'm saying and what Jesus is referring to here is the destruction of the temple by the Romans. So Jesus is prophesying this and saying this is going to happen to, and sort of almost lamenting it, but as well as predicting it, this is going to happen. And then what that is a picture for this final judgment that takes place at the end of all things. And from verse 24 onwards, that's what Jesus is referring to. So when he says this generation won't pass away until all these things have taken place, he's referring almost certainly to the events around Jerusalem, which would be a picture of the final events that are going to take place in the future. What does this passage about judgment and persecution and all the suffering that's kind of wrapped up in it say to us as followers of Jesus? The first thing I want to suggest it says is we need to be watchful. That we're not just to believe everything that everybody says. Jesus is very clear that he says some people will come along and they'll teach things and they'll say things that are not of me. So we have to weigh things carefully, and it's good to do that as a group and as a church because we can spot things that maybe by ourselves we can't always spot. So we're to be watchful. Second thing is we're going to experience suffering of some kind. We follow Jesus, and Jesus, I keep having to remind myself, Jesus carried a cross. The God of everything carried a cross. So our following him will involve us carrying a cross. He says that so clearly to us, that we're to expect suffering of some kind. And the third thing it says is we're to keep going and we're to persevere. So if following Jesus is hard, if it feels tough at the moment, read this passage again. Remember that's what he says we're to expect. And then remember he says, hang in there, because when we hang in there, we achieve eternal salvation and eternal glory. Keep going today.